Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Thursday, November 4th, 2021. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's listening today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the Start Here link in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Reis's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of that book contains a narrative description of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 17 years to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional state into part of the infallible guidance system that each one of us has been gifted. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Download it, print it off, and use it as often as you'd like. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows like this one and yesterday's show in which people have been stepped through the worksheet process. You can also go to your app store and type in the 3 words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness and get access to a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet, an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and a copy of the Dragon and Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. By listening to those audio files over and over again, you can have a tutorial that will help you become proficient at that use of that tool. And we hope people do that soon and often because it leads to comments and questions, commentaries, testimonials. And if you have any of those things to share with us, give us a call. Our call-in number is 563-999-3581. And when you call that number and press 1, it puts a little question mark by your phone number, and I'll announce you by your area code. Today is Thursday, and it's the 308th day of the year, and we're doing the Course in Miracles workbook lessons this year. That means today's lesson is Lesson 308. It simply reads, This instant is the only time there is. The commentary reads, I have conceived of time in such a way that I defeat my aim. If I elect to reach past time to timelessness, I must change my perception of what time is for. Today's purpose cannot be to keep the past and the future as one. The only interval in which I can be saved from time is now, in this present moment. For in this instance, forgiveness has come to set me free. And what they mean by forgiveness in this work is true perception, the end of illusions, the end of any perception driven by hostility or fear. The only interval in which I can be saved from time is now, for in this instance, clear perception has come to set me free. The birth of the Christ mind is now, without a past or a future. This Christ mind is ours to give a blessing to the world, restoring it to timelessness and love. Love is ever present. It is ever present in the here and now. Thanks for this instant, Creator. It is now I am redeemed. This instant is the time you have appointed for your offspring's release and for the salvation of the world within your offspring. And Pam Grout's Course in Miracles experiment, Lesson 308, is titled, New and Different Time Zone, Why I Refuse to be Bullied by Time. She quotes Kelly Sullivan Ruta as saying, Forget the to-do list, create a to-be list. Pam writes, Here in the United States, we practice a ridiculous ritual called daylight savings time. If nothing else, tinkering with our clocks is a potent reminder that time is a construct we made up and a construct we can change. As Albert Einstein used to say, time is but an illusion, albeit a persistent one. So here's my proposal. Let's rewrite the construct of time as a prison, which is denoted by statements like, I never have enough time and there's always too much to do. And instead of a number on a clock face, let's approach time as an unlimited gift of pure presence. Let's approach time as a deep moment to just be. Congress created daylight savings time. I get to create my own personal approach to time. Do I want surface time, Ferrari go, go, go time, or do I choose deep time, where all is possible, all is unlimited, all is here? Lesson 308, which says, this instant is the only time there is. This lesson reminds me the only interval of time is now. No past, no future. So, in the present moment, we have about 50 minutes to take your comments, questions, answers, testimonials, soliloquies. 563-999-3581. Call that number and press 1, and we can have a conversation. What's on your mind? On this fine Thursday morning here, noon, where many people are on the East Coast, how can we support you? What are your comments and questions about the worksheet, the process we engaged in yesterday with Ellen, the potential for raising an entirely different question, one perhaps we've never had on the show before? That could be you. 563-999-3581. Press 1 when you call that number, and we can have a conversation. I was thinking a lot about the call that we had yesterday where Susan and Ellen called and asked to work through a worksheet. And as I reviewed the call, there were some highlights that, unless you work with this tool a lot, they wouldn't be obvious. They would probably be hidden benefits or highlights. And one of them was that the power of the worksheet just works. This process, which has its roots in a number of different philosophical and spiritual traditions, and it keeps coming up, it just works. When I get my conscious logical thought out of the way, when I stop spinning in my story, and when I just cancel everything that my conscious logical mind tells me needs to happen or should happen, then I open the space where some insight, intuition, a gift, a higher level of integrated perspective can enter, and then I get a chance to move forward. But as long as I keep repeating my story, as long as I keep therapizing myself, as long as I keep trying to therapize somebody else, instead of just working through the worksheet process, then I stay stuck. And another highlight of the worksheet is that most of the time, when I hold a goal for someone else, and the negative emotional energies are rising in me, almost every time that's happening, there will be a place in my life where I am not meeting the goal I'm holding for that other person. And this is a mind boggler for most people that use this worksheet process. Because my mind is not going to show me how I am violating the very goal that I want this other person or these people or the world as it's unfolding to fulfill. And yet, almost without fail, when I pay attention to this process and ask to be shown, I cancel everything I think I want and ask to be shown, almost without fail, I can put this lens on either in the middle of the worksheet process or after the fact and ask myself, okay, so I think I need this person to tell me the truth or to stick with me rather than abandon me or to mind their own business and not, tell me how to live my own life. When I put the lens on where I ask to be shown, where in my life right now might I be violating that very goal? Might I be lying to somebody or sticking my nose in their business or abandoning someone rather than sticking with them? Almost every time I've done a worksheet and I put that lens on and ask that question, the answer is right there. It may not be hidden. It may not be hidden very deeply. It may not be right at the surface. It might take a little shifting of perspectives to see, but that is one of the hidden keys in the worksheet process that can take my work deeper. Every time I hold a goal for someone else, even if in this particular situation I may not be abandoning them, at some place my goal is for this person to stop abandoning me and to stay with me and to whatever, and tell the truth, I may not be lying to that person. I may not be in the middle of leaving that person. And yet somewhere in my life, I will be actively engaged in deceit if my goal for this person is to tell the truth, or if my goal for this person is to stay with me rather than abandon me, at somewhere in my life, I will be in the process of abandoning someone or something or myself. And that hidden but powerful dynamic in the worksheet process is something that can take your work to the next level. And that was just something that came to the forefront yesterday in the worksheet with Ellen, that her goal for her father was that he learn to take responsibility for his own emotional comfort or his own emotional issues, however it was worded. And that's a goal that Ellen will benefit from applying in her own life, from actually stepping into at least analyzing the ways in which she's not meeting that goal for herself. And Ellen's not unique, and that worksheet yesterday wasn't a one-off. It's a very common pattern in the worksheet process, that every time I'm holding a goal for someone that's not getting met and my emotional energy goes to a negative place, when I step back and look at it, I will probably see quite clearly how I'm violating that very goal at some time, at some place in my life, in the same time frame that I'm holding that goal for somebody else and they're not meeting it, and I'm moved by my negative response to pick up a worksheet. So, comments, questions, answers? 563-999-3581. Ellen, how are you today?
I'm fine. How are you, Dr. Tim?
Good, good.
Good. Hey, I have something to say about the worksheet I did yesterday, and then I also have maybe a question or two for you. Because something popped in as I was getting ready to go to bed last night, and I just thought it was kind of funny. I didn't know, obviously at the time, well, I shouldn't say obviously, at the time that, when I was a child and my father was coming in and sleeping with me at night and all that, I had no idea that there was anything wrong with that. And I don't ever, I never thought of it as any sort of abuse or anything like that. It wasn't until like 10 years ago, I think I mentioned yesterday, that I found out that that's what it was. And so what popped in last night was that I just find it so funny. Were like a couple other reasons. I'm not even sure if that's what he was doing with me, like, because all of a sudden I remembered how badly my mother snored. And I thought, wow, he could have been coming in to sleep with me just to get away from her snoring. And then there was another thing that popped in. Oh my goodness, I forget what it is now. Another reason, perfectly logical reason why he wouldn't have wanted to sleep in the same room with her. I mean, other than the fact that, they obviously weren't getting along anymore. And, that had never crossed my mind before, and I was wondering if that, was a result of having done that worksheet. I mean, it may be that he wasn't using me in that way. I don't know. That's just what I was told by him.
You mean using you for emotional comfort?
Yes.
Well,
how would I ever know that?
The truth of it won't ever be known, and
right.
and the truth of it, in an absolute sense, isn't relevant. What's relevant is, what did you make it mean, and what gets stirred up in your mind every time you tap into that memory, because you've downloaded the meaning that you've created from that memory, and that's what drives your experience of it every time the memory's activated, and your behavior every time the memory's activated.
Yeah, well, what's interesting about that is the memory of that has never really bothered me at all. But after I found out, what I was told about it, I suddenly understood the pattern that I've had in love relationships and why, because, I read somewhere that it sets up a situation where the daughter or the son, depending on, if it's a boy or a girl that this happens to, ends up being the one that ends up being with someone who's actually not available, because...
Yes, that's a very common pattern.
Okay, so that definitely is my pattern, for sure. But I guess that was my question. I don't understand how that pattern gets set up if I didn't look at it. I never looked at my father as anything other than a father to me. I mean, how does that pattern get set up like that?
Well, we don't know for sure exactly how it gets set up. There are different people that have different theories about it. There's the book, It Didn't Start With You by Mark Wolin, and it talks about how all engaging in cross-generational patterns without realizing it on a regular basis. And they don't know exactly how that happens. It gets passed down energetically, that we know that, but we don't know the process. How is it that a gentleman who's in his 20s has never had any problem with sleep all of a sudden develops insomnia, and there's no benefit to any of the medical interventions they try, the medications, the sleep hygiene, the CPAP machine, nothing works to give him any benefit. And then he ends up with someone like Mark Wolin, and they discover that he had an uncle who was working up in Alaska and out on a project, and his machinery broke down and he had to try and get to safety before he froze to death, and he kept trying to stay awake and keep walking, and he was terrified to fall asleep because he knew he didn't have the proper clothes to survive in that weather, and he fell asleep and froze to death. So here's this guy in his mid-20s. He wakes up one night with no history of insomnia, and he feels really cold, and he's terrified to go back to sleep. And so for a whole stretch of years, he's not able to sleep until they do the psychological, emotional work and the family history and discover this and start dismantling the energy he inherited from his uncle. How does that happen? We don't know. But we do get these energies passed down to us. So you can hypothesize that. I was working with somebody earlier in the week, and there were several cross-generational patterns that they discovered, that both of their parents did, that they didn't think there was any possibility they would do the same thing, and yet they're doing the same thing. One of them was a personal situation that the parents did, and this person was duplicating the pattern in their work life. So unless you slow down and look at it, you say, well, that doesn't really make any sense. Why would that happen? But it's the same dynamic. Right? So here, how would you define the dynamic that your dad was engaged in? Was it that he was trying to get emotional comfort from you and you just weren't available to give it to him the way he wanted because he needed an adult partner and you were, a young girl? Is it that you were trying to get kind of support and affection from your dad that you should be able to get from your dad, and he just didn't have the capacity to give it to you because he was so aching for comfort and support himself? And so then you discovered, this is it. I need to keep trying to get that approval and love, healthy love from somebody who's not capable of it until I get it right. We don't know exactly what the dynamic is, but a lot of different people have theorized about it, had hypotheses about how it might happen, and tried to make it fit into a cohesive theory. But, the real theory that just keeps coming up is everything is energy, and we have these patterns that we watch when we're children, and they come into us through a filter of our interpretation of it, and we don't know how that this 5 or 6 year old or 7-year-old child comes up with this interpretation of things, but they do. We don't know how, identical twins or a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old in the same family watch the same incident and come away with dramatically different interpretations of it. But it happens. And then it's the interpretation the child creates of the event that formulates their meaning, and it's that meaning that drives their reaction all through their lives every time that memory gets activated.
So I was just thinking, okay, so is there like another worksheet that I need to do around that will help dismantle that pattern for me? Because I basically just stopped even trying to, have a love relationship because it always ended up the same way. I ended up
why keep trying?
After
It's
a while,
like, you bake a souffle, and every time it comes out flat. After a while, you say, I'm not going to bake any more souffles.
Yeah. I mean, I actually...
Because you read the recipe, you do everything the recipe says, and it still comes out flat, right?
Yeah.
You read the books on a relationship, right? You try to do your own inner work. You try to be the right kind of person in the relationship, and it doesn't work out. Mm-hmm. So clearly, there's a dynamic that's going on either between you and the other person or in the other people that you're attracted to or within yourself that keeps you attracted to them that you haven't seen yet.
Right.
And so it isn't even so much, the thought that came to me is not so much, here's another worksheet to do, but how about the targeted journaling that Michael calls a mind shifter that you can start to use to explore what is hidden in your unconscious that might come to the surface if you do enough of that exploratory work, that holds a belief that you don't deserve to have a respectful, mutual, loving, mature relationship.
Wow, I felt that as soon as you said it. There it is.
Well, the dynamic is there. Some people believe that it must be there because we are creators, and if you don't have some part of you that believes you're not worthy, you would have already created that which your mind tells you you want.
And you know what's interesting is because that word "available" too kind of apply just to the fact. I mean, I'm just thinking now that my mother wasn't available to me. Just having the craving the love of someone who isn't available seems to be like the pattern that got set up.
Yeah. Yeah, so the mind shifter might be, it's safe and healing for me to find and engage in a respectful, mutual, mature, intimate relationship.
Okay, now that doesn't mention anything about availability.
Well, so put the word available in there. To engage in that kind of a relationship with someone who's available for it.
Yeah. Because what, my experience was that there was every reason to believe that the person I was dating was available, and then I found out later that, well, behind my back, an ex had resurfaced and was, doing everything possible to try and get this person back. And I didn't even know any of that was going on. I had my two first significant relationships. It was the exact same thing that happened. And,
right, but remember what we talked about yesterday. It's not the ex that surfaces that's the issue. It's the person you were dating who doesn't keep their commitment to you.
Yeah.
So there's something about the people that you're attracted to and connect with that they are the ones who will jump ship, who will, in one way or another, simply not be available.
Yeah. Well, when I was looking at that the other day, what surfaced was that it was way riskier for them, because I knew that, this wasn't just like a casual relationship. It's way riskier for them to risk just diving in deep with me than it was to go with someone that was willing to die for them. At some point, obviously it didn't work out, and so they broke it off, but yet they knew that person better, and now this person's willing to die for them, and because it seemed to me like what I saw about myself was it's more important, and I'd never seen this before, more important for me to be safe than it is to be loved. And I think that's a basic survival instinct. But I think that may be like a big part of this. And because that's kind of what I saw, like that these men were reflecting back to me. Instead of risking like having the most wonderful love of their life, it was safer for them to go with the one that they knew would not leave them, because they're willing, to take their life for them.
Okay, but again, all of that and $5 will get you a bag of organic carrots. Because that's just speculation. That's just the spinning and therapizing.
Well, no, but I mean, I saw that about myself, that I think that I believe that safety was, and, you know, is more important than, being safe is more important than being loved. And maybe that's why
that isn't going to move you into a place where you can have a healthy relationship. Seeing that as an intellectual level isn't going to move you into a place where you make yourself available with someone who's available and then create a healthy relationship.
Right. No, I mean, I need to be able to change that, I guess. To
find a way to access the hidden belief in you that it's not okay or not safe to be in a healthy, committed, loving, mature, mutual relationship with someone who's available for the same. There's a part of you that feels that's not safe. That's what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Becoming aware that there is somewhere something in me that feels that's not safe is not the same as meeting that part of me and understanding why it feels it's not safe. So it takes that experiential work. It takes that doing the worksheet process or the targeted journaling process or the energy work with somebody that completely bypasses the conscious logical mind and gives a voice to that unconscious, scared younger part of me that's holding the conclusion that it is simply not safe for me to be in a committed, mutual, intimate relationship with someone who's also available for that.
Yeah, it's so strange because, you know, when I was there, I didn't feel that at all, and it just seemed like, well, it's the other person that obviously doesn't feel that way, but I don't know. I mean, I can see how, I know I was terrified when I was younger.
Well, Ellen, here's the clue. If it happens once, it can be the other person.
Yeah, no,
but if it happens 2, 3, or 4 times, I'm the one who was there every time.
Oh, I know.
There's something in my chooser. There's something in my internal radar that is helping me find, identify, and then choose the same kind of person.
Yeah.
And we do things for reasons.
Well, I think that I'm just, you know, repeating what I experienced as a child. I mean, I didn't choose, well, some people say we do choose our parents, but my parents weren't really available to me. And, you know, so I can see from that perspective that I would just be replaying that out because maybe I don't deserve for someone to be available to me.
Right, and some people say, we know why that happens, and then they go into this little story about how, you see, the wounded child within me needs to find somebody who's not emotionally available and win them over so I can prove my value by basically redoing the failed relationship with my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a wonderful theory, but again, that and a bunch of money will get you what you want to buy at the grocery store. It's not, that doesn't help lead to transformation unless I specifically uncover the part of me that feels it to be absolutely true. And then I can work with that part. I can have that wounded younger part of me do the worksheets and or the journaling, and then I bring it fully into conscious awareness And there it can be worked with. There it can be altered or changed. But as long as it stays at that conscious level as a thought and a description and a set of rationalizations, nothing changes.
Oh, sure, I understand that.
So, based on our conversation today, one of the most important things for you to do is that mind shifter where you say, boy, I felt that.
Oh, when you said that, about deserving.
Well, being willing and available. It's safe and healing for me to be available for an intimate, mutual, respectful, mature relationship.
Okay, that wasn't the one that when you said it, it's like I felt it, and it was that I just.
Well, that's a good thing it's on tape, so you can go back.
Yeah.
There was something about just the way I said it that got you to say, "Well, I felt that."
Yeah, it was about me deserving that because I know just from my own memory that I think I build up a lot of anger around, or hurt, and then, anger around not getting what I felt I deserved. There was just a lot of confusion as to what's wrong with me that, I want this and no one's willing to give it to me. And everyone's accusing me of being upset, So, yeah.
And the more you work on that, the more you make yourself actually available for and tap into the power that's already within you to be available for a mature, respectful, intimate relationship, and to take full responsibility for your own emotional needs getting met.
Well, I think that's the key right there.
Dad.
I mean, and that's kind of like what I have been, working towards, and thinking that it's really, until I can really find that the source within me of everything, that all the love that I've been seeking, and everything else, like to try and get into a relationship thinking that someone else is going to give me any of that, that's not going to work.
Exactly.
I just kind of made the conscious decision that, okay, until I can find that within myself, I'm not even going to attempt to get into a relationship with someone, because I don't want to fall back into, because I know, I as independent as I've been my whole adult life, I've seen how when I would get into relationships, I would suddenly become dependent, and I didn't like that at all. And it was like I fall right back into like expecting someone to, give me what I was missing as a child. So it doesn't work.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay. So I was just curious as to, I just thought it was interesting how that popped in last night about my father, and I don't even know if it was true, what was going on there, what I was told, and because I suddenly saw some other perfectly logical reasons why, but I don't know, maybe I just thought maybe I opened something up to allow another possibility to pop in.
Well, as we've said, it's about how the child interprets it. I work with a lot of people, a lot of parents in the last 47 years, and the parent who is narcissistically wounded because he or she didn't get the unconditional love and approval and acceptance and nurturing from their parent. They didn't have it modeled for them that when they give hugs, when the parent gives hugs to the child, it's to benefit the child. It's not to comfort the adult, right? And when you have a parent who didn't have that, and then they grow up and they have kids, and then the parent is in a bad mood and they keep asking the kid for a hug at the kid's bedtime. Don't you have a hug for me? And don't you know I need love? And it gets so mucked up that what could be a comfort for the child becomes a burden. And the kid doesn't want to give a hug to the depressed, dependent parent. The kid just wants to go to bed, or the kid wants to be comforted his or herself. And they're not getting comfort when the parent is saying, but don't you know I need love too? Right after the parent was raging at the kid, for instance, or saying sarcastic, insulting things to the kid. But I'm just teasing. You know I'm teasing, right? And then half an hour later it's bedtime and the parent says, oh, but I need a hug. I need some love. I need you to care about me. Don't you love me? And whew, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely wasn't my situation. My parents were very unaffectionate. They're just never, I mean, I don't ever remember.
But look at it. If you're looking for affection from them, as most children do, and they're unaffectionate, then you put your spin on that. And we don't know exactly what spin. You'll uncover the spin as you do this kind of work, but some people put the spin on it, I don't deserve. Some people put the spin on it, I'm bad. Some people put the spin on it, my parents are broken as kids. Some people put the spin on it, hugs are bad. My parents are doing the right thing. I remember it was when the past 10 or 15 years, I had a gentleman in my office, and he was, I'm like 6'4", he's like 6'5" or 6'6", great big guy, and he was talking about how his parents were just very, very cold, the ethnic background was that's just, there was no physical affection in their family. And I said, okay, well then you would have a hard time understanding this, and this. He says, what do you mean? I said, well, in the family I grew up in, we would have, back rubs and back scratches and head rubs and foot massages on a regular basis. We'd have tickle parties in my parents' bed. And he got visibly uncomfortable. He said, I think I'm going to throw up. He felt that was perverted and wrong. That's how absent physical affection was in his family, that when I described an abundant, loving, not sexually perverted, there was no sexual innuendo in any of it, it was just on a regular basis, we were awakened almost every morning with a back rub or a back scratch and a head rub, and we were put to bed at night with, bedtime stories and a back scratch or a foot rub or on a regular basis by both my parents. And it was so antithetical to anything he grew up with. He literally said, I think I'm going to be sick. That sounds perverted. Because he was raised in what would effectively be a sterile environment as far as physical affection goes. The physical activity in his family was either beatings or threats of beatings. So
Yeah.
We live with that, and we learn from it. And we take different interpretations. His interpretation was that physical contact and physical affection, even non-sexual stuff, is bad and wrong, is perverted. Now, I don't know that every child in his family grew up with that interpretation, but that certainly was his.
Yeah. Now, for me, it made me crave it even more, but I never felt like I had the right to try and ask for any of that from my parents. So, as soon as I was able to, I looked outside the family. And I just remember even not that too many years ago, before my mother passed on, thinking, wow, I always thought wouldn't it be the most wonderful thing if I could just lay down with my head in her lap or something like that, but I could never, ever think of asking her if I could do that. It was just, it's like, wow, that's so sad that there was never any closeness like that. And but I do believe it was definitely like the ethnic background. That's how it was, in their households, and that's what they knew. So, I never blamed him for it, but yeah, it was something I always craved.
And each of them had their own meanings for what that would look like, or what it would mean if somebody extended that kind of physical affection.
Yeah.
We all do that. We all create our own meanings for that. When there's an absence of it, we create a meaning. We make sense of it in one way or another. We either make the other person the villain, or we make ourselves the villain, or we make the activity bad or wrong.
Right. Yeah, no, I know I turned it against myself. Because my mantra became, there must be something wrong with me, because I couldn't understand. Why, I was being treated in the way that I was. So I just remember, I kind of regressed back to that at some point, and I was just sitting rock on my floor, repeating that over and over again. And so
repeating what over and over again?
There must be something wrong with me, because I couldn't come up with any reason why all of that would be happening. So I just thought there just must be something wrong with me, like that, I'm like this. I'm all upset and angry, and everyone's treating me like I absolutely should not be like this. So my only conclusion came out to be there just must be something wrong with me.
Yep, makes good sense. Except there was nothing wrong with you, and that's a false conclusion. Yeah. But to the younger self, it makes really good sense.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so obviously there must still be, that's why I didn't know if if you recommend the inner child work.
Well, it's all so similar that if you start doing that mind shifter we were talking about, you're going to access the part of you that believes you don't deserve it, or that there's something fundamentally wrong with it, so it's not even a good thing for you to want that kind of an intimate relationship. Mm-hmm. And that's very much the same as discovering the younger part of you that believes that you don't deserve it, or there's something wrong with having an intimate relationship.
Right.
It's all going to be very similar to inner child work.
Right.
Because inner child work is simply a slight variation on uncovering the parts of your consciousness that you're afraid to look at, that we call the unconscious.
Yeah, and I think that is where the That's pretty much, I think, where I stuffed my inner child.
That's where it is for all of us. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think, the part of just being with, spending time with your inner child and giving them the love and the encouragement.
Well, you being the parent, giving them what your physical parent couldn't.
Exactly. That feels like it would be an important component.
It can be.
Yeah.
It is for many people.
Yeah.
And basically, at the root of it, what it is identifying and then dismantling the false beliefs we've downloaded about ourselves.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's like Byron Katie says, we only suffer when we believe our negative thoughts.
Yeah.
So when I uncover the specific pattern of negative thought that is fueling this pattern of selecting people who are unavailable for intimate relationship, and when I uncover that pattern of belief and then dissect it and see that it's false, which means I no longer believe it, it loses its power to drive my behavior.
Yeah, I guess that's the part of it that, because I've uncovered so many beliefs that I took on that clearly they're false, but yet there's something that's must still be holding on to them because it seems like the patterns don't release. So,
well, if you go back in this show, in the first mind shifter that I offered, and you said, well, I felt that, whatever it was about that combination of words, put that on your page and let yourself do the targeted journaling on that.
Yeah. And then from there, I take what I find and do the worksheets on it, correct?
That's certainly one thing to do. Sometimes there's just tremendous shifts that happen just from what spills out on the page as I read it over and over in a course of days or weeks, and I start to see connections and relationships between concepts and themes that I hadn't seen before, and I see how they all feed together and formulate negative beliefs that every time they get activated, they drive my behavior. And sometimes it leads me to start picking up the worksheets to say, oh, here's a thing I remember, but I never thought it was upsetting, and now every time I read it in this journaling that I just did in the mind shifter, I start crying. It's okay, well, let me go back and do worksheets on that as though I were myself at that younger age. What was my goal? What thoughts was I using to create the negative emotion, etc., and just step through the worksheet process and see what it reveals.
Mm-hmm.
As Michael says, all of the above. Use all the tools. Maybe you benefit from doing, you do a little bit on the targeted journaling in the mind shifter tool with that statement from earlier in this show, and then you get triggered to do the 3 early memories of conflict, and you start seeing some combinations and connections that weren't obvious before because you've loosened up some content and helped yourself understand that it's safe for you to look at it. And then you pick up the 3 early memories of conflict, and you might choose some different memories of conflict before that had never come to mind when you've done that exercise before.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's why
Really
Michael says all of the above, right? You just keep cycling through the tools because you never know which one's going to provide an opening or an insight for you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I like the tool of once you uncover the false thought that you've been buying into, to imagine yourself in the same exact situation, but without having the thought. Which can be a little challenging at first, but once you get there, it's like, wow. And that's when you really see that it was the thought that was causing all of the pain and suffering, and not the circumstances themselves.
Yep. That's powerful.
Yeah.
And it brings what most of us say we want, which is that freedom.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know, right now people say, in your situation, people say, well, I really want this committed, intimate relationship with someone who's available. And then they get it, and they're terrified they might lose it, and they're turning themselves inside out, upside down to try and make sure that it doesn't end. And now they're not free. Now they're living in fear.
Yeah.
And really, you know, what we want is a level of freedom that many of us have never been taught is possible.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Byron Katie talks about that so much in her work. People identify these thoughts about what they want, but really what they want is a level of freedom that they don't know exists, or they don't know how to get it. So when you start questioning your thoughts, you start understanding, oh, I don't really have to believe this. I don't really have to let this drive my perception and therefore my experience of life. So I realize we're at the end of our hour. Thank you for the call and questions and for your work yesterday. I will mute you so we can do the switchover. Blessings. I'll remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. Welcome, Jeannie Rice.
Thank you, Dr. Tim. Appreciate you.
You're very welcome and deserving. Have a great show.
Thank you.